So hopefully we're on for sound. Sounds like it's working. I'm Reverend Sue Browning. I am the minister honored to serve this congregation, and I am delighted to be leading the service. To say I'm leading the service is completely an error. Carol is leading the service. You'll see me introduce the things, and you'll see me at the end, but Carol has created an absolutely beautiful service for this morning, and thanks to all those who agreed to share as part of the service. Come on in. We've got some seats, and we gather this week, spreading our chairs out just a little bit further. We gather in our circle, we draw our circle wide, and we are just so aware of changing conditions around us. But part of that work of inclusion, part of the work that is at the core of our faith is adaptation. And we have tested that at every level over the past year and a half, this past summer, and this past week. So all are welcome here. All, I hope, can find a place of center as we light our chalice in just a moment. If you do have questions about Unitarian Universalism, about our faith tradition, about anything about the congregation, check with me, check with anyone here, and find out what keeps them, what drew them here in the first place, and what keeps them coming back. Just a housekeeping note at the end of the service, we will note that the donation basket is over there. We're not passing it around for offerings this summer. And our fellowship time will be outside, and outside masks are at your own discretion, but we just ask to be respectful. A lot of folks, for lots of good reasons, and wear their masks all the time, and we'll honor that in our spirit of respect. So Carol Meredith will now light our chalice.
These words are from Cynthia Random. We light this chalice, the beacon that calls us to love, to justice, to a deepening of the spirit. I invite us now to share in saying the covenant of our fellowship, and the words are right here. At the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Easton, we seek to nurture spiritual and intellectual growth for all ages, and to be actively involved in community outreach and service, cherishing diversity and celebrating our oneness of all humanity. We covenant to support each other in the spirit of compassion, respect, and love.
One of the ways that we build community each week is by lighting our candles of joy and sorrow. It's a chance to get to know each other and to know milestones in our lives or specific joys or concerns that we'd like to briefly share with one another. Rather than bringing the mic is working around, I will light, who's doing it? Let's see. Carol's going to come around. Carol will come around with the mic in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and light a first candle in a minute, and I will light the candles rather than our normal pre-COVID tradition of having folks come up and light the candles. So I ask everyone to just center for a moment to recognize the many ways our lives come together. We light this first candle honoring the challenges of leaving Afghanistan. We light this candle knowing that service and mission are hard, and that many families today are suffering personal loss. That will be the first candle I'll light in just a moment. And the second candle I'll light is for the many ways that nature comes at us, and imagining those in Louisiana this morning anticipating a hurricane. The places that wildfires are challenging those in the West. Examples of the places of world pain. And would you ask, please share at least your first name so we get to know one another.
Hi there, I'm Laura, and I guess what I'm about to share is both joy and concern. Tomorrow is the first day with the kids back to school in Queen Anne's County, and we have a bunch of interesting folks that are challenging the mask mandate, and it potentially can be ugly the first few days of school, which makes me feel badly for the kids. But it's a point where we have to have 2 police officers stationed in front of every school for the first few days. I'm sure we're not the only county that's having that experience, but I just want everything to go well for the kids. And my joy is that we are getting kids back in person after so long. The other thing is, so Liz and I have been out in the county for probably 15 years to all faculty and staff, but neither one of us have been out to students because we have a lot of haters in the county. And about 18 years ago, I experienced some really awful stuff. And Liz was like, you know what? We're going to put a pause button on this. We're just not going to deal with parents in this issue for a while. So 15 years later, I'm like, you know what? It's time. So I'm coming out very subtly through a get to know your teacher quiz on Tuesday, so really hoping that all goes well and that we don't have a whole lot of fallout, but at this point I'm kind of over it, so if we do, we do. And Liz is playing around with the idea of crossing that threshold, but I just don't know if she'll be able to do it, but we'll see.
If you need to be back up, just let us all know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If you need any backup, just let us all know.
Oh, thanks, Sam.
Tom and I had the joy to share this morning. We became great-grandparents last Wednesday. Our baby Jack was born in Southern California to our grandson Matt and his wife Maggie. And we will meet him in October when we attend the wedding of one of our other grandchildren.
Hi, I'm Suzanne. I have a joy and a concern that go together. The joy is that my son is finally moving into a new house, which they've been trying to move into for quite some time. The concern is that they're blending a family, and that always presents challenges. The joy is that my 2 grandchildren have now turned into 4 grandchildren, and the challenge is one of them is 16.
As I was hearing Laura talk about the masking thing, it actually caused me to have a little bit of a sorrow and a concern for myself and other parents who are raising their child in a very confusing world right now. I had an incident at the Target here in Easton the other day, which is kind of highlighted how difficult it is to raise children right now. I was walking through the parking lot with Charlie. He was singing and he was dancing and he was just having a good old time with both wearing masks. And this woman out of nowhere screamed, "Take that mask off that child before I rip it off his face!" And I turned around and just got very triggered, and I responded in a way I really didn't want to. I said, "Excuse me, we're not hurting anybody. You do you and I'll do me." And I really didn't like that that's where that woman put me and that I did that in front of my child, but it really just highlights how confusing it is right now to try to do the right thing for your child in a world where there's so much hate.
We just take a moment, think of all we heard, transitions in people's lives, joys and challenges. Take a moment and reflect. For all that is our lives, we are grateful. So Carol, I get to now sit down, grab a mic. You can turn this one off, Jim.
Sorry,
I will say that's slightly less awkward than when your husband's goes off while the other father is making a toast to the bride and groom. Just saying.
Good morning. Just like most of you, I want to help make the world a better place. And I like to think that I do my part. For 30 years, I was a La Leche League leader. I helped women breastfeed their babies. I led meetings and met with them in their homes. I was a volunteer, but it was almost a full-time job. When I retired as an active La Leche League leader, I was looking for something to replace that. I was curious about why I was so passionate about this cause for so long. What is it about causes that bring people to the point of being truly passionate about something? Well, for me, I was able to do something worthwhile and keep my children with me. I helped make sure that others didn't get the same misinformation that I got. And I really think that breastfeeding helps babies grow up to be healthy physically and emotionally, and that's good for all society. That gave me meaning to my life. I felt fulfilled as a woman and as a mother. But I wasn't just helping individual mothers and babies. I feel that breastfeeding actually helps the environment. That's why I'm still so passionate. But I'm not someone who's interested in debating and analyzing the problems of the day. That isn't for me. I need to be doing something. So one of the reasons I'm here is to find out what that might be. Some people come to our congregation because they've heard UUs are committed to action in the community. UUs have a reputation as people who want justice and take deliberate steps to make the world a fairer place. I was curious to hear more about this connection of faith and social justice. Today, we've invited 3 members to reflect on this question. How does social justice feed you spiritually? We're going to hear from Meredith Malone, Patty Hamsher, and Jim Richardson. So Mary Lou is the mother of 2, the grandmother of 5, and as you just heard, has a a great-grandson who's 4 days old. She's a Colorado native, now living in Trout with husband Tom and 2 months. She's a retired college professor in computer science, and she loves to travel, hike, and ski.
Thank you, Carol.
Right like the ice cream one.
Our grandson's wife is breastfeeding for days. Good morning. I'm Malone. Tom and I are relatively new to UUFE. Our first service was the last week in January of last year, just before COVID reared its ugly head. Social justice and spirituality. What is social justice? To me, 3 things come to mind. Fairness, equality, and simply stated, doing what is right for those who are undervalued or discriminated against. Is it fair that thousands of children in this country go to bed hungry every night? No. Is there equality in how people in this country, people of different genders, races, ethnic backgrounds, are discriminated against? No. Is it right that the monument to white supremacy sits on our courthouse lawn? I say no. And what of spirituality? Spirituality is a broad concept, and it's a very personal one to each one of us. Mine in favor?
I moved some of mine.
Okay, in favor. Thanks.
No comment.
So spirituality is a bright concept. It is very personal to each and every one of us. For me, it includes a sense of being alive, being interconnected to the world around me, and being connected to something bigger than myself. And a search for deeper meaning in my life. It gives me a sense of balance among all aspects of my life. Social justice and spirituality, the connection. A famous writer once said, "It is one of the beautiful compensations in this life that none of us can sincerely help another without helping ourselves." My efforts for social justice enhance my spirituality, and that leads me to want to do more for social justice. Thus, it's a wonderful little feedback loop, one leading to the other. Let me share my journey towards social justice, leading a spiritual life, and the connection between them. For the first 24 years of my life, and I'm embarrassed to admit some of this, these were pre-internet years, by the way, I lived in a bubble. As a child, I attended church because I had to. Was I a spiritual child? Not necessarily. Was I aware of social justices? Not really. I let it leave it to be her existence. Mine was a white world, public schools K to 12, and even in college. One minority student, the 4 years I was there, excellent school, one minority student. Did I read a newspaper or watch news on TV? No. Did my family discuss social or political issues around the dinner table? No. Kind of embarrassing. In college, I was focused on differential equations, experiencing the college life, and falling in love with a guy named Tom. By the time Tom and I moved to Hawaii for his master's degree, we had a baby, and I was working full-time to put Tom through school and put food on the table. I remained in my happy little bubble. It wasn't until we moved to Northern California in the late 60s, imagine that, and boy did my bubble burst. Haight-Ashbury, the Vietnam War, to which prior to that I paid very little attention, the occupation of Alcatraz by Native Americans, the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, the Kent State Massacre, the riot at the Democratic Convention, the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And let's not forget Richard Nixon came on the scene. Yeah. I was surrounded by new friends who cared and who were engaged. The colorful movements that served me well in Hawaii were replaced by bell-bottomed tie-dyes and hair down to here. But that is not the important thing, the external look. What was important was my awakening. What was important was what was happening here and here. I began to develop connections with something much larger than myself. In the years since, I've marched many a mile for social justice. Gun control, women's rights, voter rights, Black Lives Matter, and more. And I volunteered for many organizations working to better our community and the world. Tutoring students for their GED, teaching adults to read, volunteering at TIS, and raising money for local food pantries, and so on. But back to the connection that Carol mentioned. Working for social justice connects me to the world around me. It expands my spirituality and makes me want to work harder for social justice. It motivates me to be a better person, and it makes my life more meaningful, thus allowing me to embrace my spirituality in a much more profound way. My commitment to fairness, equality, and what is right deepens my desire for purpose and meaning. I am reminded daily of the good life I live, compared with the lives of others who are undervalued, discriminated against, or suffer in other ways. Social justice requires qualities that are developed by spiritual practice. Empathy, compassion, patience, and self-awareness. When we share common aspirations for social justice and become aware of the struggles of others, we are transformed. It's that wonderful little feedback loop that I mentioned earlier. I leave you with a quote from the Hopi Chief White Eagle, who recently commented on global crises. Quote, "This moment we are living through can be considered a door or a hole. The decision to fall into the hole or go through the door is yours. If you look at yourself and take care of yourself and others, you will go through the door. When you take care of yourself, you take care of others at the same time. Do not underestimate the spiritual dimension of this. There is a social demand, but also a spiritual demand. The two go hand in hand."
Thank you, Meredith. Patty Hamsher is a teacher and a lover of the outdoors. She has 2 teen daughters and coaches girls soccer at Eastern High. She loves to read, write, travel, and hike.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Should have added to that, I'm a writer, but not necessarily a speaker. When Carol first invited me to answer this question in a public service, I was flattered but scared. I'm an English as a second language teacher and have spent the last 7 years working with immigrant families and non-native English-speaking students. Does one's work count as social justice? Maybe. But I realize that my work does extend beyond the paid hours. I love the immigrant communities that I have become part of here on the Eastern Shore. There are the evenings when my former high school students reach out for homework help, the weekends when I go to the quinceañera or graduation party to meet my students' families, or the summertime texts with students and parents about food drive-ups and free camps. So then I thought about the why. Why do I do this work? And does it feed me? And though it's not a fancy answer, I do it because I feel driven to give back. It feels good to do for people that I know need, appreciate, and want this support. Noam Chomsky, an American linguist and political activist, says, the more privilege you have, the more opportunity you have. The more opportunity you have, the more responsibility you have. See, I was adopted. Once upon a time, I was an unattached newborn. A series of decisions that I had nothing to do with placed me with the parents and brothers that I grew up with. A good, solid family who took and still takes extremely good care of me. But the people who made these decisions, who chose to place me with my parents, who chose to seek me out, all kinds of different decisions. Could have been made to put me in an entirely different life path. As I've gotten older and gotten to know myself a little better, I realized that there is a deep hunger, maybe even a calling, to help other people, specifically those who are not secure or successful where they are. Because isn't life a lot about decisions, ones we can make and ones we are merely the victims of? The seventh UU principle talks about the respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are all a part. I often think about the icebreaker event where you toss a ball of yarn from person to person in a group, each keeping hold of a piece, to illustrate our connections literally and figuratively. There is always a series of decisions, mostly out of our control, that connects people. Layers of decisions have brought my students and I together, and it feels like my job to use the privilege of my upbringing to support their journeys. And oftentimes their experiences teach me things that support my life's journey as well. In addition, this work with the immigrant community builds connectedness. Researcher and storyteller Brene Brown defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. When they can give and receive without judgment. And when they derive sustenance and strength from that relationship. Human connectedness definitely feeds me. Beyond supporting my students in their English language learning, I make it my job to teach them and their families that their voices belong not only in our schools, but also in our churches, our parades, our restaurants, our town council meetings, our sports leagues, etc. I often test out my toddler-like Spanish skills with parents and students, not to show off, but to show that I'm trying and willing to connect with them. That it's important to me for us to try and even fail at this sometimes. To put us at ease collectively, that there aren't differences that make us less worthy of any other person. Empowering others helps empower me. That's part of the connected web. Stronger together and all that jazz. The second UU principle talks about justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Reverend Emily Gage explains, it points us to the larger community. It gets at collective responsibility. It reminds us that treating people as human beings is not simply something we do one-on-one, but something that has systemic implications. When I boast about the people I work with and my job, it's to humanize the faceless conversations that our country has about refugees, immigration laws, and our borders. One of my 9-year-old students lives with several aunts and 8 cousins in a 2-bedroom house here in Easton. I learned this over several games of Uno, where I successfully taught him to smack talk and eventually beat me with compliments. He often FaceTimes with his parents and little sister in Guatemala. He had never been to school before. He's 9, learning a new language, a new household, a new school, a new everything. He is without his parents. He stole my heart. I reached out to his aunt several times so we could find the best way to support him, and she very honestly told me that she could only do as much as she is already doing. She didn't tell me this right away. At first, she was defensive and frustrated at the school for calling it the way schools do. Our school norm is to reach out, build a school-home connection. She needed school to be something she didn't have to think about. A safe place where my student and her children and nieces and nephews could be safe, warm, and fed. Our school norms were alienating her. So I became my student's advocate and the mediator between his teachers and his guardian. We helped him get the learning support he deserved and needed. I can't do this with all the families I work with all the time, and that's okay, because not all of them need that. As Christmas approached and we all went back to virtual learning, I struggled to maintain an academic connection with this student. But each day at lunchtime, he and 4 or 5 of his cousins would join my lunchtime Zoom, and we would play silly games, make goofy faces, and give each other house tours. They had a tiny Christmas tree and a small, beautiful altar in their house dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The kids were so proud of it. I wanted to give them more. I knew my student's aunt could only do as much as she was already doing. After several emails and some shopping, this UUFE community gave each child in that family, as well as a second family of 7 kids, a full outfit of clothes, a game or toy, and a grocery gift card. Work like this indeed feeds me. It fills me up with human connection. My student, his family, me, our church community, the clerk at Marshall's who asked about the huge pile of clothes we bought, and help. It helps me live into the UU principles. It is the positive action connected to the helplessness and the heaviness of watching decisions play out differently than people imagine. Social justice work grounds me in the idea that we are all only a few decisions away from needing the support, the advocacy, the allyship, and the guidance of others.
Thank you, Patty. Jim Richardson is a community activist and member of the Social Justice Committee for over 30 years. He spent his life as a sign maker, artist, illustrator, grocer, and amateur carpenter. Now retired, he enjoys drawing and writing stories and poetry. He lives with his wife Martha in Claiborne and presently commutes with her to Asheville, North Carolina to visit their new grandson.
And sound guy. The problem of being the last speaker is you sit back there and you start changing everything. So forgive me if it sounds a little disjointed, but I'm taking part of the last thing I was going to say, and I want to say it first. Allow me to take a few moments to talk about the word woke. Not the verb, past tense of wait. It's an adjective. It is a term originating in the United States that means to be alert to injustice in society, especially racism, as in we need to stay angry and stay woke. It also means to stay aware about racial prejudice and discrimination. And it soon came to encompass an awareness of other issues of social inequality, such as gender and sexual orientation. When I was a young man, I read a lot about the world, I think, in magazines that my parents would get, Life magazine, Newsweek, whatever. As soon as they came into the door, or to the door, I would open them and sit on the floor and read cover to cover. But I really wasn't involved in any, like many people, as Mary Lou said earlier, I really wasn't interested in social justice until I came back from Vietnam. Since then, I've been protesting for causes almost the rest of my life. And that's really the reason I'm a member of this congregation today. Because it was members of like Bob Woodall and Harry Shaw and Dan Higgins, all veterans of World War II and Korea, that I became involved with, and found myself in a parking lot, in an Easton parking lot, standing on a small podium or platform, addressing a group of people about why we shouldn't get involved in a war with Iraq. I never spoke in front of people before, but I found that it gave me a sense of, not a big sense, but a sense of power that I could actually use words. And I wasn't afraid. And at that time, this congregation was meeting in the synagogue in Easton on Sundays. And all four of us spoke there too. I was amazed at the end that everyone, not everyone, there were a few people that disagreed with our words that morning, but most everyone was supportive. And that support drew me into this congregation, and I became a member shortly after. My involvement with the Tauba Boy statue it has been my latest cause. Now I've lost my place. Let me go back to being a new member. In the years that followed, Martha and I joined many marches in Washington, including our entry into Afghanistan, which I completely was against. We protested against the Second Gulf War. We went to the Women's March after the day after Trump took office. And Martha and I together helped our coalition do the last June, the Juneteenth March in Easton, which drew, who knows how many, but between 600 and 800 people. Which leads me to talk about the Move the Monument, and specifically to the question, how does social justice fulfill me spiritually? Our first principle, and we've talked about these principles this morning already, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That is the crux of the reason why I support the removal of this monument. And our second principle as well, that we also value justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The Confederate monument that stands on the Talbot County Courthouse lawn, for me, is a symbol of hatred, inequality, and injustice. The Move the Monument Coalition, of which I am a member, and Martha, is dedicated to its removal, and will continue to protect its existence until it is finally gone. I'm sorry, to continue to protest its existence until it is finally gone. It's the last Confederate monument located on public ground in the state of Maryland. My involvement with the statue began sitting on a sailboat last year with our friends Sarah and Phil Sayre up in Maine. It was June of last year. We just finished dinner, and Sarah said she could connect us with the county council meeting back in Easton. We could watch them take a second vote on the statue. First vote was 3-2. All four of us were optimistic that there was going to be a change. At the end of that vote, we realized nothing was going to change, at least not then. And it was then that all four of us decided that we had to come home and do something. And all four of us joined the coalition. It was strange because last year, when we went up there, we were in the midst of, toward the beginning of COVID. We all went out with masks. Martha's giving me a signal to. I asked her to, so. We went out with masks. We took tents so we could camp and didn't have to go to the motel room. And when we finally got there, we got off the dock, it was freedom. You know, it was like the greatest feeling. But then this vote that the county council made brought everything back to reality, for me anyway. So, in conclusion, let's go back to the word woke. I think over the past 40 or 50 years of my life, I have slowly begun to awaken to how things are. There's lots of promise, you know, because there are things that we can all do. We shouldn't just, you know, curl up into a ball and make us all feel that we can't do anything. We all can do something. So my advice this morning is to find something that you can be passionate about if you haven't already. Let's all leave this world a better place. Let's all be woke.
You're going next?
It's on, Jim.
Okay.
Our new vision statement says that we are one of the social justice leaders for the Mid-Shore of Maryland. Here at UUFE, we have a social justice pod. I've joined this group and I'm discovering again how social justice work fits in with my spiritual journey. We're working with local organizations such as TIS, which we've heard, the Talbot Interfaith Shelter, the Chesapeake Multicultural Resource Center, Care Packs, Move the Monument, which Jim just talked about, and For All Seasons. As a fellowship, we partner with these organizations with volunteer resources and financial support. But we as individuals support many different organizations on our own too. So I'd like to open it up to you. Do we have time? 15 minutes? What sort of social justice work have you done, or are doing, or would like to do, that fits in with your spiritual journey? This isn't a competition to see who does the most, but some of us may be looking for inspiration. You may be new to this area, or recently retired, and you're looking for activities that inspire you. Are you reading to preschoolers at the local elementary school? Would you be interested in helping people register to vote? How about working with a local riverkeeper in keeping our waterways clean? Now's the time to share what you do.
And we are aware of time, so we're going to just ask for a phrase or a sentence or two. Thank you.
Well, I'm no longer immediately engaged, but I used to be engaged with the Talbot Mentors program, which is also blended with the Mid-Shore Scholars program now. I am still in touch with my mentee, and we're very close, but I know there's always a need for mentors, so I want to consider that.
Good morning, I'm Tina. My passion is LGBTQ issues. thanks to this congregation, Translines, which is the group I founded here on Mission, actually meets here on the third Tuesday of each month. We had a wonderful pool party yesterday, and we had almost 40 people show up from Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. I also am involved with GLISTEN, which is the organization focused on LGBTQ issues for K through 12 students, with PFLAG as well, which is the most appropriate for LGBTQ. I'm in the process of founding the Pride Center for Delmarva. We are actually going to be having our first board meeting in 2 weeks.
Last year, and hopefully this year, September happens to be Suicide Awareness Month. And last year I joined with a group to walk through Easton, just wearing a cap and stuff like that to let people know. That group did not walk, so I kind of walked through Easton with a shirt and a cap, and was stopped by a couple of people and talked about it, and they talked about their feelings. One who had attempted suicide, another one who had felt like she wanted to kill herself frequently. And, I handed her information and where she could find help and stuff like that. So that's kind of the thing that I do. Really.
Thank you all. We've heard many perspectives today. We know the range of social justice definition and understanding is wide. We know spirituality is experienced differently. We've heard how members found a fit for their interests and how they connect work in the community to our faith. I hope we've heard that it seems important to feel the integration of our actions with our faith. If our spiritual activity is about feeling whole, of connecting the dots in a meaningful way, how do our actions, our partnerships, our community relationships make us feel this sense of community? This sense of fulfillment. My big question, our take-home question, what do you feel inspired to do in your life? What do you feel passionate about?
I just want to have an emotional round of applause. It's good. And in a minute, we're going to have our board announcements, but in addition to just the foundational message today, I also hope folks see Carol had an idea probably 7 or 8 weeks ago as we were starting to plan summer services. And this is what gelled out of it. If you have a topic, it could be so many different things. Call out for help and we can help you frame a place to go deeper, to form and create an opportunity for others to hear around a series of questions. So with that, I offer Jane Turby as our board member giving board announcements today.
Just 3 announcements. The picnic that was scheduled for today at the Dowdies is canceled, unfortunately. So the Dowdy summer picnic is canceled. This message is from Carol Meredith. If you would like to help greet people on Sunday morning, please see Carol. It's a great way to get to know other people, and training is given, and we always have 2 greeters. So you have support. I have done that and I will do it again. Finally, the Aesthetics Committee will meet this morning following the social coffee time, right here in the sanctuary at 11:20. All who are interested are welcome, and Ann Davis is leading that effort. It's about the look of the place, and that's important too. We like beauty. Thank you.
And before we extinguish the chalice, just one more thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I just add very quickly that the social justice, I thought it would be said, but it hasn't been said.
The social justice team here at UUFE has decided to start meeting on the third Monday of the month. So we will have a meeting coming up, I don't know what the date is off the top of my head, in September, the third Monday in September anyway, we'll put it in the newsletter, but just to put it out there that all are welcome. My guess is we're going to end up on Zoom, but that will be determined as well. So hopefully some of the energy from today, if you have ideas or things that you'd like to share or things that have inspired you, please join us.
And sort of the final part of business I just want to touch on briefly is the Delta variant. Everything that is going on with the virus, your leaders are very aware of that. We're meeting again today at 2 o'clock. We have a reopening task force that the board has charged. It includes Christina Drostin, Lee Marquez, Peter Paul, Tom, Bojena, and myself to keep assessing if in-person meetings make sense. I think our biggest focus right now is to figure out how to do hybrid, so somebody can both be at home today hearing the service and be here. So just keep staying tuned. You may see us blop over to a Zoom service for once or twice. We are experimenting with technology. If anybody is a super expert in live streaming, please check in with Bojena at the end. But we are both aware and we realize how much people have been fed by being able to gather, and to recognize that some people are left out because they can't wear masks in here. We have folks that have tried it and it's not working. So inclusion has us looking both at our youngest and folks that have other complicating factors. So just be aware of that. If you've got views on it, please let me or any of the folks' names I just mentioned know. So at this point, we are going to and the donation basket is out, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the service. Please give Judy something to do. We extinguish our chalice this morning with words from Rebecca Edmonston Lang. Mindful of our highest aspirations, bound by common faith and purpose, and yet beginning with ourselves as we are, let us take one more step together in extending our quest for dignity, justice, and love. Go in peace. Go in love. Go knowing love surrounds you wherever you may go. Thank you for joining us. We'll open these doors in a moment and tell Carol how wonderful it was. Carol, that was just amazing.